He's between February 2001 and March 2002, he hacked. Well, the Americans say he hacked 97 US military computers. He says he hacked a lot more than that. Using the username Solo, Right, there's two different stories to this, basically. There's what Gary McKinnon says he did, and there's what the US military says he did. But we'll get into that a bit later, because there's a reason why the US military may have lied.
May have fabricated information to try and get him put in prison for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah. So, welcome to A Brief History Conspiracy. If you're new to our channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you see all our new videos pop up, and share the video if you like it. That always helps. So they allege he deleted critical files and operating systems that shut down 2,000 computers in the military. That just after 9/11, he deleted files of the Il's weapons station, crippling munition supply to the Atlantic Fleet. And he caused at least $600,000 worth of physical damage. I mean, basically computers that need to be replaced, and problems due to the causes, lost man hours or whatever else. Also, how much it cost to then find him.
He was hacking remotely, so how did he damage the physical hardware?
I assume because of whatever he did, deleting critical subsystems, that they then had to basically replace that. That's what they allege.
The worst he could have done, is caused software problems by doing what you're stating there. He could have caused them to have to reload the operating systems on these 6,000 PCs and set them back up again. The physical hardware would have still been sound.
Maybe they're talking about the man hours it takes to actually then do that. Maybe that's what they're costing as a cost.
But then they shouldn't refer to it as hardware. They should refer to it as software damage.
Yeah. They also cause it damage. They keep calling him an attack. They keep saying he attacked their systems. Now he says completely different. He says all he was doing was going in and having a look about. Even though he does admit that he posted some things on some of their web pages. One thing he posted was, "Your security is crap," and I think it sounds like that. Just appeared all over their websites.
Yeah, but it was.
It was crap. Yeah, he's just telling him.
He managed to hack in using the user account admin and blank password. That was his process for hacking into the various different organisations, such as the CIA, the FBI, NASA.
Yeah, the Pentagon, the Navy, and the Army. The way he explained it I watched an interview. The way he basically explained it was that they actually posted. You could actually search for the IP addresses of different parts of the military, and they were open access. So anybody could just search for the IP address. And once you had the IP address, he could basically log on, search for, like you said, blank admin passwords.
Yes,
and just log on.
Yeah, so not every computer that he looked at would have been hackable by the method that he was doing it. It's only the computers where they'd failed to set up a password for the administrator account on that individual computer. Yeah,
and he says at Johnson Space Center, it seemed to be all of them. So it was like 200 or something computers. And they said that he had full access. He was able to do something like he captured the domain, and once he did that, he had full control then of the network. He could do whatever he wanted. And then he used this LAN search to do blanket searches for different things. He says it was incredibly confusing once he got in there. COVID. It was incredibly confusing once you got in there. And he said sometimes you didn't know where you were. The networks were all over things. It's like Spaghetti Junction. You'd start in one place and you'd find yourself in something completely different. And he didn't know where he was half the time. So why did he do it? Particularly, the other thing he does say he did was he posted on one of their websites again, US foreign policy is a government-sponsored terrorism these days. I am Solo. I will continue to disrupt at the highest level. Now, he admits he posted that, which does kind of then disagree with his argument that actually all he was doing was going in and trying to find evidence of UFOs, free energy, and these other things he was inspired to do. That does make him sound more like,
or it was just
that he was trying to disrupt. Yeah,
it was just a boast that I'm a hacker. I'm in your systems. It was really easy. I'm gonna, cause as much trouble as possible. It's just a boast, isn't it? Look how good I am.
Yeah, look how clever I am. And
yeah.
but that does make it sound more political though than maybe he has spoken about since.
Yeah. Okay.
So, we'll go back to that in a minute. So basically, why was he going on? Why did he want to do this? So he saw the Disclosure Project. That's basically what he says inspired him. He said he was always interested in UFOs and things, and he was actually a member of the British UFO Society when he was a kid. His stepdad was huge into sci-fi and stuff, so he was always interested. And then he saw the Disclosure Project. He says he saw Donna Hare, and when he saw Donna Hare speak, that's what got him absolutely convinced, and that's what made him want to break into particularly the Johnson Space Center and go looking for some of the evidence.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone. My name is Donna Hare, and I worked at Philco Ford Aerospace from 1967 to 1981. During that time, I was a design illustrator, draftsman. I did the launch slides and landing slides, and also projection plotting boards, lunar maps for NASA. We were a contractor, but most of the time I worked on site, in Building 8. I had the opportunity to do extra work during downtime, which was between missions, and I walked into a photo lab, which was the NASA lab across the hallway. I had a secret clearance, which is not that high, but I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was.
She says she worked at Building 8 of the Johnson Space Center, and she saw personally NASA photos getting airbrushed, and most importantly, UFOs or signs of alien intelligence being airbrushed out of photos. She said that wasn't actually her job, and she had a certain level of clearance. But she literally basically went to the next office, and the bloke went, "Look what I'm doing."
A guard told me that he was asked to burn some photographs and not to look at them. And there was another guard guarding him, who was in green fatigues, watching him burn the photographs. And he said he was too tempted. He looked at one, and it was a picture of a UFO, and he was very descriptive. I can go into that later with anyone. He immediately was hit in the head, and he had a big gash in his forehead. He was knocked out, and he's terrified, so he would have to be protected. Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed, and that is what he told me. And he also...
And like, I'm airbrushing UFOs out of it, basically. So then she started asking people about it, and she actually witnessed at one point that one bloke sort of mentioned something about UFOs and got clocked on the head by a security guard and like dragged off. Sort of thing, like, hey, shut it, stop talking about that. It's very hard for if you assume this isn't true and that NASA aren't airbrushing photos, you have to believe she's a liar. And if you watch her speaking, I don't believe she's a liar. She might be mentally unwell, I suppose, but I don't think she's a liar.
At the time, I was talking to one of the techs in there, and he drew my attention to a photograph, a NASA photograph. It had a dot on it, and I said, "What is that?" Well, he drew my attention to it, and I said, "Is that a dot on the emulsion?" And he said, and he's smiling, and he has his hands crossed, and he said, "Round dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground." And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth. I'm assuming the Earth because it had pine trees on it, and the shadows of the craft or whatever it was were in the same angle as the trees. And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was, but I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, "What are you going to do with this piece of information?" And he said, "We always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public." So they're pesky little creatures appearing on this photograph they wanted to get rid of. After that, I decided I would ask questions to other people that work there. And I found that I had to ask them away from the site and not on site.
But she was talking about that it was common knowledge and that these sort of photos and these things had to be airbrushed out. And one image that she saw was of like a cigar-shaped UFO over what she believed was the Earth.
Apparently, they've been doing it for decades. They've been doing it ever since what was it? Was it Project Blue Book, where they did that? Where they made that report, didn't they? Was it in the 50s, where they decided if they did find any evidence of extraterrestrial life, cities, civilizations, artifacts on the moon, Mars, or anywhere, that they would hide it from the public because the public wasn't capable of the paradigm shift that would occur if they released that information.
And they're right. So 90% of us would freak out.
I wouldn't freak out.
I would. Yeah. I'm in the 10%. I'm in the 10%.
I guess we're in that 10%. Yeah.
But I hope anyway. So Gary McKinnon said, "I want to go and find proof of UFOs, free energy, anti-gravity technology. The military must know, so I'm going to go and find it." So he hacked them.
And claimed to find exactly what Nonterrestrial had said he would find in the Disclosure Project. He found 2 folders, one saying processed images, one saying raw images, and obviously then went to try and load up some of the raw images.
That's what got him caught. Nonterrestrial inspired him and then screwed him over. Unintentionally, obviously. But yeah, that's what got him caught. Before that, though, he actually found the non-terrestrial officers list.
Yes, this is brilliant.
Yeah, I have a problem with this.
Go on.
He found the non-terrestrial officers list, and I love how it's in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know why that amused me, but I use Excel at work. It's like, and it's in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know why that. I don't know. I don't know why I want like a special spreadsheet for things like this.
Well, why wouldn't they use the same software platform that 90% of the world use? Of course, they're going to be using Excel and Word and PowerPoint because they just will be.
I know. It's just, I don't know. It just amused me. I just thought, oh, that's on Excel. I don't know. Anyway,
given how good their security was and the fact they left the administrator accounts with blank passwords for him to get into all of these computers, do you really think they had specialist software that was different to the normal stuff?
Yeah, true. I don't know. It just amused me. I don't know. Anyway, so the non-terrestrial officers, he reckoned there's about 25 names on there. He estimates, but he was only estimating basically on how many names are on the sheet, and is there like 50 spaces or something. So he was guessing. Right.
Yeah, there was an Excel spreadsheet, and the title was non-terrestrial officers. Then it had names, ranks. It wasn't a long list. Didn't even fill the whole screen, I think.
Well, could you just generally say how many? I mean, if you were to guess, are we talking 20, 50?
20. Maybe 30.
Did you notice if they were male or female by chance?
That I can't remember.
Okay. First names and last names?
Definitely ranks, but nothing to say, Army captain or Navy captain or...
so the designation wasn't there as far as which organization they worked for.
Huh. And then he found a tab on the same file that was labeled materials transferred. So it was between vessels. He estimates, again, it was 8 or 10 vessels. They were all USS, which means they're Navy.
I think they were even USSS.
He says USS. I think there's other stories that have come off since. I've actually watched again. I watched him actually his own words yesterday. I'll put the clip up.
Oh, okay.
He says USS.
Only the 2 S's. I thought it was United States Space. Basically, one of the
sausages.
One
Can't remember what that last S is, can you?
But one of the vehicles supposedly was the USS Enterprise.
Yeah. Now I've seen that, but I don't know. He doesn't say it.
It's not. That's not Gary McKinnon.
Yeah. He says this is where I've got a problem, right? He doesn't name in the interviews I've seen any of the ships. He says he can't remember any of them, but then he says he searched for them and they weren't active naval vessels.
And the other thing was a list of ship-to-ship and fleet-to-fleet transfers. Bear in mind fleet-to-fleet, so multiple ships, of materials. And these ships weren't, US Navy ships. Again, I don't remember any of the names, but I remember at the time looking and trying to match up the names, and there wasn't anything that matched.
So, Now, this theoretically would have been pretty top secret information if indeed non-terrestrial is what it sounds to be, which is off-world, right?
Yeah.
So none of the names that he searched for, he could find in like a Google search, but he can't remember any of the names. He just says that was a long time ago. I think he'd remember that.
I get now. You'd have thought closer to the time that he would have remembered some of the names.
Yeah.
He would have to have copied and pasted them or transposed them from the spreadsheet that he was looking at into his other search.
I just think, yeah, you find a list of spaceships, you search for them using the naval ships, and none of them come back as like existing operable in-service vessels.
You could just go back to
you'd remember one or two. Well, yeah, exactly. And you'd remember one or two, wouldn't you? So I do have a problem with that part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
What got him caught was, like you said, he started to download one of the photos that he found in that file with the unprocessed images. Mm-hmm. And because he only had a 56K dial-up, and
he was watching a pixel appear every minute.
Is that thing? Oh, when we were kids and we were downloading porn or dirty pictures, and they just like downloaded really, really slow. You got a face. That's a face. Oh, she's pretty. Oh, it's a sexy neck. Here's the good bit.
Here's the top part.
When I was like 13. But yeah, so it was a 200 megabyte image, which is quite a big file actually. But even now,
especially back, that'd have been, well, I'm trying to think, file size. Yeah, I mean, it would have been huge back then. If you think back then, you're still using floppy disk drives that are 1.44 megabytes, 200 megabyte picture files. That's a big file. That's
but
a high
spy
image.
Yeah, high resolution. Yeah, but spy satellite images are high resolution. I mean, they're used. I mean, this was aimed at an object in space, but normally they're aimed at objects on the ground, and you could pick out individual vehicles and things at hundreds of miles. So they were high resolution. So I'm not surprised. It's a big image, really. So that again sort of computes for me. Mm-hmm. It sort of like stacks up.
Yeah.
The fact that he was downloading it and it took forever. All he saw was what he believes was he saw the hemisphere of a planet. He assumes it's Earth, but it didn't go far enough, so he can't confirm. And this cigar-shaped vessel. He says these protruding dome-like things as well, but basically a cigar-shaped vessel. He says he spent too long on that. And because he waited too long while he's waiting for the file to download, he was suddenly interrupted. He saw somebody else come onto the system sort of thing, and they traced him. And within a week, he was being arrested.
And this was what part? I mean, was this NASA? Where was this? Are you at liberty to say?
Again, I wish I was. I find it so hard to remember all of it. It's strange. I can remember IP addresses, but lots of the names and where I was when I found particular things. I remember thinking at the time, this must be NASA and the Navy, and all secret parts thereof. So it was either the Navy or NASA I was in most likely. I think it was most likely the Navy, but I'm not entirely sure.
So, nice one, Miss Air. You screwed him. But
I'm pretty sure I think there's another lady as well that was in the Disclosure Project. It's Dr. Carol Rosen that also worked at Building 8 that also corroborated Gary McKinnon's.
Is she the one that did a lot of the lunar images? She said she actually physically airbrushed some of the lunar images.
I think so. Yeah, she also used to work back in her early career at NASA with Werner von Braun.
Yes. Because I know that's part of this, isn't it? Is that we actually believe that part of the lunar missions, they saw things when they were on the surface of the moon. They saw vessels or something watching them, and that we had to airbrush a lot of that out.
Yeah, isn't it quite strange that all of NASA's astronauts are pretty much believers in extraterrestrials, or won't talk about the topic? Yeah, it tells me that something's going on.
Yeah.
And he also was afraid. He said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it. So I do want to let you know that I worked out there for a number of years, and I ran into this. So it's not something everyone knows that works out there for a long time. My boss didn't know about it. Some people that sat right next to me didn't know about it. It's very strange because I don't know how they can do it, but they can let some people know about it and then others not. I'm willing to testify before Congress that what I'm saying is true, and thank you very much.
He was arrested, Mr. McKinnon, initially, so he was arrested in 2002. Initially, he thought it was just going to be a smack on the wrist. He was just going to get maybe 6 months in jail, maybe some community service, and then it sort of dragged on because at the time 9/11 had just happened. We still had the US UK treaty from like 1980 something for extraditions. So you had to prove that there was some sort of physical crime had been committed. So they couldn't actually extradite him based on that treaty because at the time all he'd done is gone in and had a look around. Then the Americans basically said he'd caused this cost. There was this monetary value as attached to his crime of $600,000.
Yeah.
But in 2005, we have got a new treaty with the US. And he says he's actually seen this treaty. And it's quite funny because all the spelling's American, which he thought was quite funny for a British treaty on our side sort of thing. So it's all American spelling. So I think, remembering this is just after 9/11, and we were basically bending over for America at that point.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, look at Blair backing Bush to invade Iraq, which they both should be tried for war crimes on. But anyway, it's another story.
Talk about the nearly 4,000 dead on 9/11. We killed 100,000 Iraqi civilians during the initial phase of the occupation. Nobody talks about that.
No.
Anyway, that's going on to sidetrack. So we had this new treaty. Now, the new treaty mean extraditing people was a lot easier. And we extradited people to the US in those few years, those dark years after 9/11, with no process. And they ended up in Guantanamo. We allowed people that were being brought from other countries to come into the UK and be acted as a staging post and then be transferred to Guantanamo, which is against almost all of our laws. It's against the human rights laws. These people never stood trial, and we allowed them to go through our territory. It's completely illegal, but we allowed it because 9/11 had just happened. So this new law came in, and the Americans stepped it up. All of a sudden, they're talking about 60 years in prison. They're talking about conspiracy charges because he spoke to other people about what he'd done. And they said, well, that's conspiratory. And he just said, no, I was just telling people what I'd done. There's no conspiracy.
It's almost like they needed to fabricate some charges in order to have enough grounds for the extradition.
Yeah. It seemed to me, though, that, well, our Home Secretary then in 2012 finally got round. Yeah, Theresa May. And we denied it, didn't we? Because we said he's got Asperger's and he was a suicide risk. So under the Human Rights Act, we didn't extradite him. I actually thought that was a bit...
That was quite ballsy. That was ballsy of Theresa May to stand up to America like that. Yeah, I was quite impressed when Gary McKinnon didn't get extradited, to be honest.
Yeah, but also I felt like we made up an excuse in a way. It's like we didn't want to extradite him. It's almost like they pissed us off. She just found an excuse.
It's almost like they believe Gary McKinnon.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe the American government's fabricated charge sheet.
Well, maybe they did. Maybe the initial charges, which he says he saw the initial charges and they weren't too bad. Then the initial charges of 2005, and he's like, bloody hell. And maybe we thought the same thing. Maybe we were like, whoa, no, you're not just making stuff up. You're not just going to make stuff up to extradite him just because you want to. And you want to make it. And they made it so public as well. And that's really confusing. Why was it so public? You know, why didn't they do it quietly? We extradited lots of other people really quietly.
Because they want to make a example of him to stop other people attempting to hack. Given how poor their security was, they realised how vulnerable they probably were.
Maybe that pissed Theresa May off as well. You're not making stuff up.
Well, no, but yeah, and I think Theresa May just basically probably went down the line of, well, you should have had better security than having administrator accounts with blank passwords that he could get into so easily. It's your own
fault. Yeah. So we said that at the same time. It's your own bloody fault.
Well, it really is. Like the blame goes to the cybersecurity teams of the American governmental institutions.
It seems like they didn't have a cybersecurity team. What's the one thing Gary McKinnon talks about? He says he saw IP addresses from all over the world in those systems that shouldn't have been there. So he says he wasn't the only one hacking them. People were hacking these things from all over the world. China, Australia, Russia. Everyone was hacking them. I suppose the internet was still pretty new at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and they hadn't learned their lesson. But you'd have thought it would just be common sense. We've got a door, let's put a lock on it. You know, they didn't even have firewalls.
It's much easier on like with a physical door to know that you need to have a physical lock. It's not so easy with a non-physical door that you need to have a non-physical lock on it. I don't, you know what I mean? I think it took a while for people to probably understand how vulnerable computers were to being hacked or attacked by other people from remote locations with their own agendas, and that this situation obviously brought that massively to light, and they wanted to make an example out of him, imprison him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I suppose as well though. I mean, we weren't relying on them as much. So when you don't rely on them much, maybe there isn't a lot of effort put into securing them. But as you rely on them more and more and more, and you get attacked, it becomes more. So then you're more willing to spend the money and have a budget. I suppose the cybersecurity people say, yeah, we can secure it, but you need to give us a budget of 100 million or something. And the people actually with the money going, do we really need to do that? So they just don't bother.
I bet you that's what it boiled down to. It probably boiled down to, no, we need to put that 100 million into invading and occupying the foreign countries instead.
Yeah. Priorities, people.
No, seriously, I bet you that's exactly how that went down.
Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. It all comes down to the bean counters and the money.
Yep. That was it.
I love
sorry, I was going to say that other astronaut, Gordon Cooper. He didn't die recently, but Gordon Cooper was the one that had the really monotone. Gordon Cooper. It was very monotone, very flat, his voice. He never really had any sort of change in pitch or tone. You know the one I'm on about?
Yes, I've seen him in interviews. Well, no, I've seen him for 5 minutes in interviews and all.
Yes, that is a problem. But he was a firm believer, as well as Edgar Mitchell, who died more recently.
I think it's Edgar Mitchell that died recently. I say recently. I think like last year, even year before, but died within the last couple of years. He was the one that was very vocal, though, wasn't he, Edgar Mitchell? He was very vocal about it. What did you say, sorry?
Deathbed confessions of some of these astronauts as well. It's phenomenal, some of the things they're saying when they no longer were worried about the ramifications of what they're saying. Yeah,
I'm always suspicious of deathbed confessions, though, because I mean, you got the deathbed confession of Ben Rich, and it's probably not true. I'm always a bit very careful.
With the military within your company, with the military within your country, and you've signed the Official Secrets Act, and you've been sworn to secrecy of the threat of imprisonment for the rest of your life. The only point where you're going to no longer worry about that threat of imprisonment, if you do divulge that information, is when I've got 1 to 2 years to live because I'm dying of cancer. Oh well, it doesn't matter anymore, does it? If they put me in prison now, well, or I'll die in prison for the last year of my life. Oh wow, what a loss.
Yeah, bring it on, sort of thing.
I'm basically going to be in the medical ward the whole time anyway, having chemotherapy anyway. So I'm not really going to be in prison anyway. So you've lost the threat then, so the threat's gone. So I totally believe in a lot of these deathbed confessions being probably true.
Okay. I believe people would do it. I just think you have to be careful with what the evidence is. It's not just somebody saying they said it. It seems to be with the Ben Rich, somebody just said he said it. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of evidence to say he actually did.
Right.
But it's not saying he didn't. It's just the evidence is a bit. So you got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. Okay. With everything. Right. So going into this, then we have to start talking about Solar Warden.
Yes.
Which is the secret space program that we've alluded to over 10 episodes or something, and never gone into. So, I, as you all know, I have a huge problem with Solar Warden, in that I don't think it exists. But if it does exist, it's the best kept secret on the planet. And even when I try to find out information about it, it's really limited. So what I was able to find, Solar Warden was established apparently in 1980. I found a website that's done this like it's facts, like it's history.
Right.
So it was established in 1980. The Solar Warden fleet is maintained of 8 motherships. That is the cigar-shaped motherships, and anything up to 43 scout ships. It's operated by the U.S. Navy under UN authority. and has input from several countries, including Canada, the UK, Germany, and Russia. I think they're mixing up the IS and the International Space Station with Solar Warden, because that has that. But anyway, it doesn't. This on the sources I found, it doesn't really establish why, but I'm assuming it's to defend us from UFOs and aliens. Solar Warden sounds like it's a defense force. Really? What's your thinking? What's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, it sounds like it's a defence force, doesn't it? A warden is somebody that looks after something. And so what? Solar Warden, solar system warden. So what? The protectors of the solar system. Yeah, would be the way I'd look at the yeah.
The reason why I bring this up though is every place I see that talks about Solar Warden, their evidence is Gary McKinnon, and that he saw this, he hacked it, he saw this. I think I've never seen Gary McKinnon talk about Solar Warden, or he definitely didn't in his early interviews anyway.
There's another guy that speaks about it a lot, Richard Dolan.
Yeah,
Richard Dolan believes in the secret space program, and has a big documentary on Solar Warden.
Even when I look at the Dolan interview, the Dolan thing, there's a lot of saying this is this. There's not a lot of this is why. This is where we got this information from. There's not a lot of background to there's not a lot of detail.
No, but when you understand what we know about the propulsion system that we're still using, the rockets that NASA uses, it's the same as the V2 rockets that Werner von Braun developed to fire on London in
Basic
World War
principle,
II.
Anyway.
So we're using the same rockets that were being used 90 years ago, pretty much. They've developed a bit, but they are pretty much the same. Okay?
Same principle,
same
definitely.
Technology, right? But then we know that companies like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon in Area 51 have been getting $50 billion a year of UK taxpayers' money and been researching alternative propulsion methods in secret for 70 years. You combine that with the idea of a secret space program and the fact of, the UFO Disclosure Project, Gary McKinnon, the information he's found, people corroborating Gary McKinnon like Dr. Carol Rosen and other people saying that they have been airbrushing out these pictures. It kind of makes sense that NASA's just the front. Yeah, Ben Rich's comments. Yeah, NASA's just the front. It's the space exploration front.
One of the things is that there seems to be is they're saying these cigar-shaped spaceships that we see, and things like the Tic Tac and Gimbal videos are these smaller scout ships. So it says they seem to be arguing that a lot of the UFO sightings we see are actually these Solar Warden ships. A lot of the time.
Well, makes sense. If they do exist, then it'd be much higher probability that we're seeing them more frequently than we are having visitors from other stars that frequently. Right. Yeah.
So, again, though, I'm going to go back to that. Why? We have the ability to go to the moon easily, by the sounds of it. We have the spaceships in existence already, and they're defending the Earth. And most of the world, governments at least, seem to know about it. If you believe this one source that says the program's had authorized by the UN, it has input from several countries. If it was just the US doing it, I could maybe believe that they would be more secretive. But why would you then put so much effort into still building? We're about to go back to the moon. We're about to build the Gateway space station, which is like an ISS style space station that's going to be orbiting in the moon. We're going to be using that as the thing. We're building the Orion module and a new heavy lift rocket. They're putting massive amounts of money, but mainly massive amounts of effort.
Not that massive. Pales in insignificance compared to the funding that's gone into the military industrial complex.
That's true. I give you that. It's oh god, it's about 1/20th or something. This NASA's budget. And I mean, SpaceX budget is they reckon they've spent about 30 billion on their the Falcon 9 and their project to be able to what they call in the space taxi project, 30 billion, which again that's not even equivalent to our
1 year's funding
budget
for Raytheon or Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, I mean, I forget what the US budget is, but our military budget is about 38 billion pounds.
The approved 2019 Department of Defence discretionary budget is 686.1 billion.
So there you go. That's like 1.2 trillion pounds.
Yeah. So NASA's
Okay.
little bit of funding pales in insignificance, doesn't it? Really?
That's equivalent to our entire economy.
Yes. And they've only got a population 5 times the size of ours.
Yeah. And considering the amount of debt they've got, you think they'd dial that back a bit, didn't you? Really, and try to pay off some of their debt. Their national debt is like 22 trillion.
Yeah. Well, all great civilizations seem to fall, don't they, at some point?
Yeah. Well, and America will. They will go and decline, and somebody else take over and be the most dominant force on the planet, and then they'll decline and somebody else will take over.
It's not China and the China Communist Party, because if it is, we're all screwed.
I think America are about to destroy China. I think they're going to use COVID. But anyway, that's a different subject. So I go back to this thing then on why are we still using rockets? Why are we still putting satellites in space? Why are we still doing these things when we don't need to?
Because
we have better technology.
Nothing. They need some kind of front. You can't just, NASA's done nothing for 70 years. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You need to have something there. Otherwise, the public could really catch on.
But why tell the lie in the first place?
Project Blue Book decided that we weren't capable of handling the truth.
So you mean that we have to lie because the whole point is we're protecting us from UFOs. So because we can't tell everyone about UFOs, we can't tell everyone about Solar Warden, so we can't tell everyone about the technology that Solar Warden uses.
It's all linked, isn't it? It's all, yeah, of course. I mean,
put it down to this: Solar Warden, yes or no?
Yeah, I believe that there is a secret space program that exists, and that we've probably already got off-planet capabilities. I probably think that there's almost, like Richard Dolan says, there's a breakaway civilization amongst the elite of our civilization, especially with the environmental concerns that this planet's going to have in terms of water, global warming. I think that the elite of the world have already probably formulated their off-planet plans to develop colonies on other planets in our solar system, etc. I think there's probably already bases on the moon, Mars. I just think that's more likely, and that we've been lied to when you put all of the information together than people are just completely making all of this up.
Yeah. Now, see, I don't believe it, but I think I don't believe it mainly because I'm being careful, because I want to believe it, and I want it to be true, but I just don't think it quite makes sense.
Okay.
I've almost talked myself into it, though, in that I've sort of that connection between, okay, we can't say aliens exist, we can't say that they exist, we can't say Solar Warden exists. So I could follow that has a logic to me.
It's not like the governments of the world have been caught lying to us in recent years.
How dare you? That's treason.
So I'm very sceptical of government because of the lies. If you study history, it just doesn't paint a very good picture that you're being told the truth ever, and therefore I'm more inclined to believe, especially when there's corroborating things that link to each other from different people and different groups, and I'm more inclined to believe that they're onto something and the government's lying to us than that the government's telling us the complete truth and these are all nutters.
Yeah. No, see, if I'm going to single mine down to what I genuinely believe, I think there's what NASA and the government tell us, and there's like things like Solar Warden, and I think we're somewhere in between.
Well, yes, that's the.
I think we have UFOs at Area 51. I think we have alien spacecraft. I think we have not been able to replicate some elements of that technology, and that's why we've never been able to build flying saucers. But we've learned a great deal, and a lot of our modern technology is probably, at the very least, inspired by alien tech. I suspect it's something like element 115 that we can't replicate yet, and that's what's stopping us from actually building something like Solar Warden, and that's why we're still using rockets. There's something in that technology we can't replicate. I'm not sure whether I believe Gary McKinnon or not if I'm 100% honest. I do think he maybe saw something that he's either misinterpreted or he's actually maybe not telling the truth.
Well, I don't know. I don't think the American government would go after him to try and imprison him for the rest of his life.
Oh, he definitely hacked those computers.
He definitely hacked.
He definitely did that.
But if there was nothing to find, or he found nothing, why such a big deal about him hacking in? Wouldn't it have just got brushed under the carpet?
There is that, which again makes me think that's somewhere in between truth.
Yeah, some of the theories online are probably on the other side of it. They're very, you know, and well, we're already doing interstellar travel. We've already, you know what I mean? We're already capable of traveling to the different stars, and we've already got non-terrestrial officers that are out there in flying saucers, you know, with anti-gravity propulsion systems, and they're flying between, you know, here and Alpha Centauri and Sirius, and you know, and they're visiting different star systems, and you know, maybe not to that extreme. But you're probably right. The truth normally lies somewhere in the middle. But I'm more inclined to believe that the truth is weighted more towards the theory that Solar Warden
exists.
The theory of existing than,
or is it at the very least a plan? I mean, it could be something that maybe Gary McKinnon saw something maybe wasn't operational, something was planned, or something like that. Maybe, and he's misinterpreted it. Like I say. Just because even if Solar Warden doesn't exist now, doesn't mean it's not an ambition. You know what I mean? It's not something they're trying to do or building towards, or I don't know.
And the main reason the military-industrial complex exists in America is because as private contractors, you know, contracting or obtaining contracts from the American government for defence purposes, is because private corporations can make things a lot more secretive than public organisations can.
And that's true as well. And you talk about compartmentalization. That's almost a perfect way of compartmentalization, because you are physically separating things. And you look at, like you said, the amount of money the American government spends. They're either insanely wasteful. I mean, their Marine Corps is larger than our entire military. They've got more planes. Their Marine Corps alone has got more ships, more planes, and more men than our entire military. Army, Navy, Air Force combined. Their military is ridiculously big, and that should scare all of us. They're building towards something, and we should be worried about that. But I don't think the money they spend equates to the actual size of their military.
No.
There are elements of their military that are hidden from us.
If we really want to know what's going on, we have to stop there being black budgets. It has to be total oversight over the entire spend on the American tax people's money. And once you've got that, you can't hide things nearly as well. And then we'll find out what's going on. But while black budgets exist.
Yeah. But it's like, say, even the Senate Oversight Committee, the military will literally come in and say, they'll say, what did you spend this money on? And they will literally say, it's either it was just a failed project, or you don't need to know. And I've seen Raytheon executives sit in front of senators and say, you don't need to know.
Yeah. Even the defence contracts in the military-industrial complex consider the president a temporary employee. They don't even let presidents know what they're up to.
Neither should they.
So these programs, a lot of these black budget programs, have no oversight, no judicial control, nothing. So they could be doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
If you've got a rogue leader of one of these, you know, places that decides to start torturing people with various methods, they could be doing it, and we don't know because there's no oversight.
They did do it.
They did do it. Well, exactly. Yeah. They could be flying spaceships around to other stars.
Mm-hmm. I think a president would have had to have signed off at some point, but isn't there stories about just after? Yeah, they would have done it at some point. But a president could sign off on a very loose order. Say Gerald Ford back in the day, aliens exist. Told about it. Actually, Mr. President, this is, and he could sign an order to say, you are tasked with finding out anything you can about this and dealing with the problem in any way you see appropriate. And then 60 years later, they're still acting on that order that every president since might know nothing about.
Well, look at the Majestic 12.
Yeah,
supposedly the 12 members that were the original members that had cosmic clearance, that were the ones that went and did all the crash retrievals, recovering the alien spacecraft, and then subsequently, probably the reverse engineering of those aircraft that they were obviously, and they were the 12 people that had the full picture, but then everything else below them it was all compartmentalized. So they only had very little parts of the picture. So only those 12 men knew everything. And then you look at films. I think we are told a lot through Men in Black. Men in Black's basically the Majestic 12.
See, I always just have to sort of bite my own lip on this because I don't want to get carried away, and that's my problem. I don't want to get carried away with it. And there are bits of this story, particularly with Gary McKinnon, that you go, I want to believe him, but it's the same with Bob Lazar. I do get carried away with it. And then I start thinking, oh God, I completely believe Bob. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then something else will come up and go, oh shit, I don't want to be conned. The fact that Gary McKinnon can't remember any of the names of the starships or any of the officers' names that he saw, that's a problem for me.
That is a bit of a problem for me as well, actually, because I think if you'd found that kind of information, the first thing I'd have been doing was scribbling those names down.
Yeah. I think he'd remember afterwards, but he says he then searched him and he still can't remember. So, yeah, that is a problem. The unprocessed image bit, I completely believe, and I'm more likely to believe. I don't really believe Solar Warden, but I do believe that NASA and other organisations have been scrubbing photos for years, because I do think there's examples of, well, they haven't done a very good job of it as well. And so yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I'm tending to I quite like a quote from Einstein. Okay, never grow suspicious of your own intuition. Right, and my intuition is telling me that the government are lying bastards, and these guys are probably somewhere to the truth. They may be exaggerating a little bit,
yeah,
but they're probably closer to the truth than the government.
Yeah. A Jamie quote: "People talk bullshit." They just do. That's what I made that up. I know it was very eloquent, but I believe it or not, mate. I just made that up.
It's the credibility, though, of the people that are telling you these things. The 400 people that Stephen Greer organised for the UFO Disclosure Project were high-ranking members of the American military, Air Force, radio traffic controllers for commercial planes,
Canadian government.
You cannot knock the credibility of some of these people. That's the point.
Yes. I'm like, would you? The one message was like, would you mind awfully? Because I think this is really interesting. Can I put it on Twitter? I'm like, yeah, do that.